What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today is a video that I'm very excited about. I'll be talking with three special guests about what the Worlds meta is doing to the post-Worlds meta for the upcoming regionals and other North American events. We have League Cups and AC regionals at Knoxville coming up, and I believe there are some non-North American major events coming up as well. With us today, we have Charlie Lockyer, Carl Barone, and James Arnold. I picked Charlie to be here since he just top 32'd at Worlds with a nice little twist on a known archetype, which was PikaRom, but his team played PikaRom with a heavy count of judges. But he's also been known to play some off-meta stuff and really work with decks that not everyone was too confident in. So I would like to have him here to talk about what he thinks the meta is going to look like. There's the nice little tool drop. Then we have James Arnold, who I believe hasn't been as competitive in the recent years, but he has won a regional. He won Roanoke a few years ago with Lapras, Quad Lapras, I believe it was. So he's definitely a great player with a lot of knowledge and has been in the game for a long time and has shown his skill. And lastly, Carl Barone, more of an up-and-comer. He's one of the most humble and nicest faces in the Pokemon game. Everybody loves Nice Guy Barone. And he's pushing hard for the invite this year, so I'd like to have somebody with the fire under their ass like Carl has on the video. Why don't we go Charlie, James, and then Carl. Just let me know how long you've been playing and any team or affiliations that you have before we get into the topic.
All right, what's up? I'm Charlie. I've been playing the game since about 2011 and competitively since late 2015. And I play for Top Gear Comics.
Cool.
Hi, everybody. My name's James. I've been playing since the beginning of the game. Been playing super competitively since about 2004, 2005. Took some breaks here and there. Haven't played recently within the last year or so, but pushing hard this year. I'm on the next level games.
Cool. And
Hey,
Leslie,
guys.
Carl.
Hey guys, my name is Carl Barone. I've been playing for just short of 2 years now. I'm a content creator for Rare Candy and Twitch streamer, and I try to be everybody's friend, try to be everybody's mentor, and I'm going super hard this year. So thanks for having me, Luke.
No problem. So my first question is about Malamar variants. Malamar were the most abundantly played decks in day one, as you will see on the chart on the screen. Yet only 5 out of 49 players to advance to day 2 did so playing Malamar to our knowledge. PokeStats were nice enough to try to collect all of that data, and sure, there are some spots missing. We don't know some of the names, what they played, but out of the decks that we do know, there were 49 players that advanced from day 1 to 2, and 5 of them were confirmed to be playing Malamar. On the following day, only 22 players entered with Malamar, and that actually made Malamar the second most played archetype. Worlds Day 2 wasn't too big. After seeing this poor ratio of popularity to success, do you believe that Malamar will continue to have similar popularity at upcoming standard events? Why or why not? We'll start with Carl.
Okay, I think Malamar will always be inherently a popular archetype. I happen to think it's an extremely poor deck in the meta right now. One of the funny things that I was hearing a lot after Worlds from a lot of people that I talked to that had experience with Malamar or even played Malamar is that they told me that it doesn't actually beat anything. And I thought that was a funny way to word it, and I actually agreed with it. I think people are comfortable with Malamar just by virtue of having an invincible attacker, I guess. Invincible is probably not the word, but, they always have the attacker that they need.
Mm-hmm.
But with a lot of the decks in the meta that kind of start with their main attacker or a good attacker, that have a kind of a less of a degree of setup, I don't think Malamar is a great choice. I think it's the gatekeeper in a sense for other single prize decks, like I've heard my friend Emery say a lot, which I think gives it just a tiny amount of merit. But overall, some of these setup decks that take a while and kind of have a more of an underwhelming level of power to them, I'm not a big fan of. I think people will always play Malamar, but as far as I go, I won't touch the deck. I don't think it's a good deck by any means, and by virtue of other decks starting with their main attacker, it's just something that I don't think is ever going to get very good. So
Okay, James, agree or disagree? Anything else to add?
Sure. So I agree with a lot of what Carl said. I do think that it just is not a deck that while consistency is a thing that gets brought up a lot with Malamar, in that it has access to Pokemon communication and mysterious treasure and things like that, and also the fact that it's been a deck for going on its third season now, and people are familiar with it. They have the cards, but the problem is that just slamming Giratinas into your opponent's active Pokemon with basically no other choices a lot of the game opens yourself up immensely to being outplayed or being played around when it's just, well, I know what they're going to do next turn every single turn. It's not exactly you're not going to get a ton of match points that way. You're going to get some, but you're not going to get a ton of match points that way, and you're probably not going to be the guy going home with the trophy with it either. I do love the style of deck, but as it is right now, there's not options in the way that you can really play it with the limited card pool that we have, between Ultra Necrozma, the fighting versions with Giratina Garchomp, or just the straight psychic versions with Giratina and Spell Tag. Each of those is just very, very linear and revealed at this point
Oh, I think we might have lost
currently.
James.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we only lost you for about 3 seconds. I think we
Okay.
lost you right after the Malamar, Giratina, and Garchomp variant. You were just
Okay.
saying that they're linear. I don't think we
Yeah,
lost too much.
yeah, basically just that as they are built right now, it's kind of linear. So in the future, obviously, Malamar is an extremely powerful card, but for currently right now, this format, I don't feel like that's where anybody should really want to be. Um,
Cool. So, Charlie, I think that James and Carl covered the viability and inherent issues and strengths of the deck. But to get back to the main focus of the question, Charlie, do you think the popularity will rise, be neutral, or fall from Worlds to AC regionals?
All right, let's just get this straight. Malamar is a theme deck, so 100% it's going to see play, regardless of how bad anyone says it.
Okay.
It's an easy to play deck that a lot of people can win with if you're new to the game. And like in general, what they were saying, it can win some games. It's not going to win the event like almost ever. It's relatively consistent. Playing a straight psychic build doesn't have options, so like your turn is always the same. It's not that hard to triple psychic recharge, do a distortion Dortina, retrieve, do 130 with a spell tag on it. Like that's pretty simple. So a lot of people are going to play that, and a lot of newer players will be able to get like a 5-3-1 record with it. No, I don't think any players who play at a competitive level above like it being one of their first regionals or something, or they go to one regionals a year, if they play above that level, I doubt they'll be playing Malamar.
So you do think it will keep the popularity, though?
Yeah, but with a less either less skilled or less experienced player base.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay, question number 2. Green's Reshi and Ability Reshi were both successful in day 2 of the event. Do you believe that they are both high tier decks worth consideration, or do you think that one is objectively better than the other? Elaborate and feel free to pick your favorite variant. James, we'll start with you.
Personally, I do believe that both are relevant. However, I think they are just completely different decks at this point, between the amount of healing that you see with the Green's Reshiram variants compared to the more aggressive ones with Ninetales and the Jirachi engine. The problem that I have with them is that a lot of people are just building their decks and they're like, no, this is the way that I beat Reshiram, and that's not how this works anymore, because they are just very, very different decks. And I personally, I like the greens version a little more moving forward in the metagame, but I do think that they both are still considered to be high tier decks moving forward.
Charlie?
Yeah, I kind of agree with James that they're very, very different decks. I think they're both going to be good in the future. It depends on the player, in my opinion, though. Like, I think both of them have, or I know Greens has like a relatively low skill floor, but has an insanely high skill ceiling. Like, you can play insanely well with it if you're a good player.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like Blaine take that to top 4, and Blaine's amazing. And then we have Ability Reshi, which I only really saw being played by the Limitless crew and a couple other random people. But that deck also has the high skill ceiling, and you can play really well. They're completely different strategies. The way that they are built and can be built is completely different too. You can put Fire Crystal in the ability version, and it'll be completely different. Unlike they had 18. In general, I think both will be good. I think they're very different and very. They're both decks for consider.
Cool. Charlie, could you just get a little closer to your mic when you speak?
Yeah, so I'm beside my computer. Sorry.
No problem. And then, Carl, is there anything that James and Charlie have left out or that you disagree with?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I'm not a fan of Ability Zard at all.
Mm-hmm.
Before the event, I was way more harsh about the deck as opposed to after. I think the way Limitless built the deck is really, really good. I still don't like it, but I'm always more partial to Greens decks because I just love having the ability to dive in and kind of choosing my own fate. And I really love reactive decks too, which I feel like Greens decks can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I really love that aspect too. The abilities are that they played. It's good. I like it. But sometimes it can be a little temperamental. Whereas with the other with Greens, I just need to start with the Greens or something, a Welder, and I feel great. So
yeah.
I'll always side with Greens decks, but I think we'll see plenty of both. And
Yeah.
probably more Greens than ability, honestly. I'd think.
Yeah, the abilities starts are definitely more volatile because of all the other basic Pokemon. You actually have a stage 1 to set up in that deck. Whereas Greens are, you're hoping to start Volcanion, and if you don't, your only other choice is Reshi, and you hope to find a switch into the Volk. Okay, so next question. PikaRom was the obvious deck that we knew about, that we knew it would see a lot of play, and that we knew it would see success. The Top Cut Comics players came with Pika Judge, a new variant, playing 3 to 4 Judge depending on the player, which was used to mimic the previous format's Turn 1 Let Loose. Do you prefer Jirachi or no Jirachi, Judge or no Judge, and do you think PikaRom stays a relevant and strong contender, even though that it is so mainstreamed in this meta? Charlie, we'll be starting with you, and I think I know what you prefer already.
Yeah. The first thing I'll say is even though the Japanese junior won with not obeying this rule, I would 100% say that if you're playing Judge, you've got to be playing Jirachi because
Yes.
you just need it as a safety net
Mhm.
to not destroy your own hand. And like a lot of times, I would have to do that. I would only play Judge turn 1 if I started Jirachi or knew I had access to a Jirachi on my bench. There was no chance I was just gonna be like draw Judge. Oh, my hand sucks. Pass. Like I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Even though the Japanese junior did end up winning Worlds with it, I still believe it's not really a consistent approach. With that said, though, both their decks have merits because I would say the Turbo version with no Jirachi and no Judge actually often beat out of the Judge version. That was our most unfavored matchup was Mirror going into the tournament, and that's what Isaiah Bradner was in our room at the same time, and he was like hype on the Judge deck the entire time. And then the night before, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna switch to Order Pad Pika with no Jirachi and no Judge." And we're like, "All right." But yes, I do think the Judge variant is insanely good because consistent disruption in this format beats so many decks. Like Green, it's not just like the turn 1 Judge. It's like you're playing against Greens Reshi. They have an 8-card hand. Now they don't. You judge them, then they hit the greens. You judge them again. They somehow hit a good card again. Maybe it was Welder, maybe not. You judge them again. And they're never going to get out of all of these judgments, especially in a best 2 out of 3 format.
Yeah. There was someone in the Open that I judged 4 times in one game, and they were playing Greens Reshi. So they would go Greens for Welder and another item, and I would say Judge. And then they somehow got out Greens again, and I said Judge. It was pretty amazing on my part, and but he didn't like it very much.
My only losses at the event came from, or at least on day 2, came from my opponents, or really in the entire event, came from everyone just drawing incredible hands off of Judge.
Yeah, it'll happen sometimes,
Which
just like it does with Let Loose, or did with Let Loose. Carl, what are your thoughts on PikaRom and its variants and its viability moving forward?
I think the Pika Judge deck is the best way to play PikaRom, without a doubt. Emery stayed with me, so I was aware of the deck, and watching a couple games between him and I think Bokari was around too. The deck is incredibly good. The Jirachi has value all game long. Something cool that I saw would be like lightning riding into it, and then like you give up a 1 prizer, but it really doesn't matter. So the Jirachi is just so clutch. I mean, I play a deck that's very susceptible to judge, so I hate to hear that.
Yeah.
But Charlie's bang on about the constant disruption in the game right now. It's just the fact that the deck could do that and have such reliable and different attackers. It's very good. I would never want to play PikaRom a different way after what I saw them play at Worlds. So good on them.
Yeah, the only reason I would is actually the reason I didn't play it day one, because I didn't want to hit PikaRom mirrors. And I ended up playing Pika Judge in the open. And one of my hardest losses were a PikaRom playing 4 Lily. And I judged them into, like, Radar Lily for 8. And, like...
Seems good.
And
I judged Coop into turn 1 full. He started Pika, and he's playing a Jirachi variant. Both my losses day 1 were mirrors. At least I beat the one that played Lily, thank God. That would have been really bad.
Yeah, I don't think Lily's good in PikaRom, but it definitely is when your opponent's playing 4 Judge.
Oh my God! Every single time I think I played against 2 PikaRom players that played Lily, and after the match I was like, "Why did you put Lily in your deck?"
Well, and then after that, it's just the biggest confirmation bias ever. It's like Lily's great in PikaRom.
Yeah, yeah, my opponent definitely got that. James, what do you think about PikaRom?
I think it's just the best deck. I think that there are still things to be explored in it, but I do think that as of right now, I like the Judge version the most out of any other of the lists that are out. I think that there's still just more evolution to happen in the format overall, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But that's kind of my PikaRom statement as well. Is just I think that I would want to be. PikaRom is in the area that I would want to be in playing and moving forward.
Cool. Okay,
Yeah,
moving on to... Oh, sorry, Charlie.
I was saying one of our logic pieces for playing the Pika Judge the night before was we had heard the info that DDG had some amazing deck no one had ever tried before, and they were going to win the tournament.
Yeah.
Or really what we were specifically told was Igor was going to win the Open, not that DDG was going to win the tournament. Which actually did happen. And what I was saying in the room was like, if we want any chance at beating this deck, since we have no clue what it is, why don't we just make it draw bad? So we're like, okay, we're gonna have to play this. Little did we know our deck already took a 90-10 against it, but
as did many decks, I think. I'm not a huge fan of the Bird Box, but we'll get there. So the last big archetype of the weekend I'm gonna talk about here is Mewtwo and Mew Box with Welder, which won the event in Masters Division, and Blacephalon the Ganondale took 2nd place. So Blounds was already really popular, but exactly how popular can Mew Box become? Will it ever reach the popularity that, say, PikaRom and Malamar saw at Worlds, or will it just be a very good deck that never gets that popular because of the text, the intricacies, the skill level, etc.? We'll start with Carl.
So I think the deck is pretty hard to play. I've put in some games with it, and it seems really hard to play. Like, at first I didn't think it would be too bad, but it's been rough on me so far, and I think that has a way of discouraging people if after 10 games they're like maybe 3-7 or 4-6, and they just kind of, it feels weird to them, or like they don't have their answers automatically. I think people tend to give up. But I think the deck is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I like it a lot. I'm not sure if I like the Psychic Energy version or the Rainbow Energy version, even though the Psychic Energy version won Worlds.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to reach a tier of PikaRom or Reshiram simply because of the amount of people who will give up on it after like they play a couple games and they lose because they misplay, but they won't admit that they misplay.
That's a very good point. Bad. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, like I played it maybe 10 games on stream and I won like 2, and it's because I had no idea what I was doing. But I think that is a deck that pays off so hard the more you play it.
Have you checked out the top 8 list? It's a much more streamlined version. What was it?
Was it Japanese?
Yeah. They focused on playing using Magcargo. They just like their main focus was.
Oh, they didn't even play Latios.
Yeah, their main focus was copying Flareon GX and Magcargo GX. So it was much
Interesting.
more of a streamlined deck. I covered it in an article that'll be out around the same time as this video is. But it's
Yeah.
much more streamlined and aggressive. It has really no defensive qualities.
Interesting.
But it's also much easier to play. You can like sneak your way into playing the other version with it.
I didn't even check it out yet, but I'll do that. But overall, I think it's not going to ever reach the popularity of Reshi or Pika, just because I think people tend to give up when they don't like. There's so many avenues you could take with that deck. It's unbelievable. There's
Mhm.
so many ways you could play that deck, and I think people aren't going to put in the work. I mean, that deck to me is going to take 50 to 100 games of work to even start, like to win a tournament.
To
like,
win
you
a
could
League Cup with.
League Cup I could probably cheese out something, right? I could just tag purge a couple times, but to bring to a regional, I don't think we're ever going to see it in the numbers. But I think when you do see it, it's going to be somebody who is very good and knows what they're doing, and you got to be careful.
Unless it's round 1, and then be very happy.
I still don't want to see it.
James, do you have any differing thoughts on Mew Box?
So the way that every time they print a Mew that can use the attacks of everything, the way that it always works is it wins big tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
People try it, they lose with it, but then they're afraid of it because when they play other things and they play against people playing it, they lose. So what's going to end up happening is there's just going to be a lot of power plant moving forward, and the top players are going to continue to win with different Mew variants, and that's going to be the battle. And I think that's going to be the tug of war that we start seeing is we're going to see an influx of Mew and Mewtwo at first, and then it'll back off, but it'll keep doing well. But the numbers, the conversion rate will be extremely well for the deck. And then we'll start seeing a ton of power plant, especially once we start hitting expanded tournaments with Mew and Mewtwo.
Oh,
so
God.
bad.
So that's going to be very, very fun. That's what I'm most excited for. Is just expanded in general, but yeah, I think that's going to be the tug of war that we start seeing is the power plant versus the Mewtwo Mew stuff as the format evolves. I do think that the deck is very good. I do think that it will continue to win, and obviously with so many options available, and every single time that they release a set, it just is going to get more. That is going to be something that to watch out for moving forward.
Definitely. I like that opinion. So we're going to move on to the next question for Charlie. Which decks outside of Tier 1/High Tier 2 that saw play at Worlds do you think will see success in the future? So not including any of the decks that we already talked about, what decks do you think will continue to see success, and which ones that we saw at Worlds will not see success? You can either answer one or both.
I think Zach Reckler's Dark Fox will be good. He played it very well and came super close to top 8ing as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was with the B strings was really solid. I think he needed a thicker Weavile line, but otherwise that deck is insanely good, and no one really realized how good it really could be. Another one that I don't expect to see as much success for was things I played against. Like I played against a baby Blacephalon and I'm winning into day 2, like a straight baby Blacephalon. And I was confused as to why it was 5-2 until I'm playing a judge deck, which should destroy that. And he was like, and he crushed me. And I was confused that this dude's playing like B-Strings, Welder, a bunch of like Ultra Space and stuff. And it's like a super straightforward list with like one Hoopa is the only tech.
Mm-hmm.
That deck was actually surprisingly good. I don't know if we'll see much play. He was a foreign player. I forget from where. I think it was Spain or something. But I was utterly surprised by it. And otherwise, the rest of like the off-meta stuff, I think a one-prize deck that isn't Malamar will see play at some point. I really want a one-prize deck that isn't Malamar to see play.
Yeah, for sure.
I hate playing tag teams. I literally had to buy my PikaRom for this tournament. I hate tag teams. So I want these tier 2 decks to succeed. I just don't know how long it's going to take.
So before the video, we were talking a bit about this question, and you mentioned the DDG deck, the Pidgeotto control, and you had some opinions on that. Do you think that will continue to see success? Does Jessie and James from Hidden Fates help it? Does it fall off? What do you think, Charlie?
I think you realize their mistake. once they entered the tournament and played round 1 and saw Jimmy lose to Robin. But because that deck is very good at beating players who have no clue how the deck works or have any understanding of the control deck. Hence why Igor won the Open, which tends to be a very low strength in general tournament. Like, it's not the hardest event to do well in because all the top players are most likely in day 2. And yes, it crushes unprepared players. But if you just think about it for like a good 5 minutes, most decks have a pretty solid strategy at beating it. Like, I was just standing there with Bokari. He immediately says like, "Oh, why don't you just go, not put down more than 3 energy on any active? Just move around your energies, conserve all your cards so they can't Mars you. Like, have a 20 card hand, and then full voltage GX every game." And you're like, "Oh crap, this is an auto win."
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of decks, like the Toward Fire deck, they're like, "Oh, we have 18 fire. How are we going to lose this thing?"
Yeah, DDG, or that testing group, they're not all DDG. They usually bring decks like that to regionals and even ICs, where they can prey on unprepared lists and unprepared players. But in my opinion, whatever weight it has, I don't think it was a great choice for Worlds Day 2, where you literally have the most prepared people in one room.
Yeah, they've been dominating mostly in the unprepared metas or whatever. Like, I had a similar philosophy at regionals where I played a ton of decks that took straight up auto wins to the random field because it would get you a day 2 finish most of the time. And they did a lot of the same thing this year. And that's hence why they dominated at regionals. But at a lot of the ICs past the first 2, a lot of their decks were both PikaRom and their lists were off. But and then this one was like, I didn't really know if control would have really fit that meta nearly as well as fit the Open.
Yeah. James and Carl, do you have any other of the tier 2, tier 3 decks from Worlds that you think will continue to see success? Carl first.
Well, anyone who's been listening to me or watching my stream or whatever knows that I was on the Guardy train.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before.
That tier 2?
Well, we haven't mentioned it.
Oh, true. I think it's better than tier 2.
Oh.
I think it's 1.5.
That deck's good.
What ultimately ended up happening was the final list I settled on is identical to the list that got 10th. I didn't even know that guy.
Wow.
Which was really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That hurts.
Right. I think that
body to me.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing for sure. That's why I was in the Open. I think that deck could be made to do whatever you want it to do. And obviously it's a greens deck. You always start with your attacker. There's also cute techs you could use like Xerneas GX or Mimikyu GX to even out some matchups. And those GXs let you stamp your opponent to 1, which is really good. You can play as many power plants as you want. God, I can't say enough about how much I love that deck.
Go find a 5th power plant.
Yeah, right? You can go find whatever you want, right? I'm trying some stuff with Jessie and James, even though I don't know how good that's going to be, but I'm certainly trying it. And, I mean, that deck has to be on everybody's radar. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It has to be. Like, I've known this for a while, but that deck is good.
Mm-hmm.
The deck is good.
Yeah.
Does it beat fire? I actually do not test it enough.
People say that fire is like, they're like, oh, I'd play it if not for Reshi. And it's certainly not ideal, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make it out to be. Like, they have to go welder out of the gate, and then things are tough. But, I mean, you're going to get to stamp them. You're going to get to two-shot them. You know, you're going to be able to do – there's playback to the deck. You know, like, is it ideal? No. I'd much rather see Pika, Blounds, anything else, even Mewtwo.
Malamar.
But yeah, Malamar, forget about it. It's a walk in the park. But if you play against Reshi, it's not a match you should get rolled. Like, it's not an auto loss. Like, I hate those terms. I'd say it's somewhere around the neighborhood of 60-40 or 65-35. It's the next worst matchup outside of Stall. And just random crap like Behem and stuff. Like, Behem is like a 90-10. Like, you can't win that matchup. But the spread that deck has in the meta, especially the Worlds meta, I think was very good.
So Carl and I actually were talking about Guardian a fair bit because it was one of my top 3 choices a couple weeks ago. And my sentiment was that the Mismagius package increased your odds in the Reshi matchup, but it also took 8 spots up in the deck, which was not worth the rest of the matchup spread. Do you still agree with that, Carl?
I mean, I don't like Mismagius, but I might like it more because now I could treasure for a Weezing and Jessie and James. So, like, that's kind of something I'm thinking about. Pablo.
Afford that discard, the 2-card discard from your own hand with Jessie.
Yeah, because you have dead charms in some matchups too. So, like, a lot of the time I would, like, throw down a charm or, like, a gear if I had a supporter, or if I used one mixer by tossing. Just there's stuff that comes up over the course of the game that you just kind of start to dump.
Yeah.
So I still think the Mismagius is bad, but now that everybody's talking about this whole new Jessie and James meta thing, I'm certainly thinking about at least something that could insulate me from that kind of thing. So
cool.
Not good for Worlds going forward. 100% worth exploring for sure.
James, any other any decks that we have not mentioned that were at Worlds that you think will continue to see success or will have more success that haven't been fully explored?
I like Aerodactyl. That deck is, honestly, it felt great. The Aerodactyl deck literally takes an auto win to PikaRom. It takes a auto win to both Charizard variants. It actually just like feels fantastically good if you don't catch a significant number of losses for the World's meta. Moving forward, I'm not exactly sure. The Pidgeotto deck, if that does catch on, which as we've talked about, we have doubts and questions, and we'll see how it ends up. But if that does end up seeing play in mass and or catching on with Jessie and James things in the future or evolving into something else, the Aerodactyl deck does struggle with that, but it really, really did feel great between Caracosta shutting down Malamar entirely by one-shotting Giratina and also turning off their spell tags, between just everything like that. The numbers just line up so well between Caracosta also one-shotting Charizard for a single prize, and that's just kind of where I think I definitely am not done trying to use Pokemon Research Lab. So we'll see how that goes moving forward.
Shouldn't you be fine against the the Pidgeotto control deck, because you just put Aerodactyl in the active, they take 2 energies to Guru?
It most of the time, yes, but if they are able to get you into a situation where they can lock like a Jirachi active or anything and run you out of energy, then that can be a problem. Just because where you don't have any kind of recursion or anything, once you run out of energy, if they are able to catch you, then they can end up just running away.
Yeah, I really, really like Fossil Box on paper. I built it on the way home from NAIC, and like that was the first deck I was like, this is what I'm taking to Worlds. But the whiffing the fighting energy or whiffing the calm for the correct evolution just got the best of me.
Prizing all 3 Pokemon Research Lab got the best of me.
Ooh.
That's probably my favorite loss I've taken in a long time.
Wait, how are you consistent? How's this deck? Like, that's
you can only start Jirachi. You have no other starter.
Yeah, I know that, but I built a list before that I gave to my friend to play in the open. We were testing it, and we made it like insane consistency only. It was like 4 Jirachi. We played 4 Research Lab and 2 Stadium Nip, and we still couldn't find it every turn 1.
Bills was the key for me. Like just having access to like 4 bills on turn 1 and just being able to like go Jirachi and then piece together an escape board into another Jirachi into bills, like, and then just making sure that like the games that I lost were definitely games that I missed Pokemon Research Lab on turn 1, but I only missed Pokemon Research Lab very few times, and that was including in testing too. And it's just Bill's analysis that card is unreal. And if we're going to talk about a singular card, That is the card that I think needs to be explored even more moving forward in almost everything in some number.
I really liked Bill's analysis in Henry Brand's Mewtwo box because that
Hmm.
was something I never put in my own Mewtwo lists, and it really helps a lot set up for the next turn.
It's so good. I had it in all of my greens lists. I even had it as a one of in PikaRom before Worlds, just because it pieces together your custom catcher turns, or it pieces together your second custom catcher and the reset stamp to then just destroy people. Like it just finds everything that you need.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I like Bill's a lot. Next question for Charlie. Which tech cards do you think will see less popularity leading up to AC Regionals and for AC Regionals?
I'm gonna consider cutting Hoopa
Hoopa?
from from PikaRom. I mean, it was really good against Mew Box too. That was the big thing. I played against either 4 or 5, I forget, and I had that was the thing I played against the most, and I had to use Mew or Hoopa a ton. I only played against one Malamar too, and yeah, it like won me the game there. But I also don't expect the Malamar players to be as good as I said before. So like a normal playing around with PikaRom, just like as a normal deck and trying to judge them or something, should usually be able to win.
Okay, so Hoopa's gonna be. Do you think Hoopa is something that only the best players are gonna cut, or do you think it's gonna be cut universally?
I don't even think it's going to be cut. I think it needs to be considered to be cut. I think
Okay.
we considered cutting it for day 2. I wanted to cut it for day 2. We were going to play Pachirisu so it could be Guardian, but ended up not deciding not to do that. I think and Mew or Hoopa actually came in clutch in the end. I do think that's the only major tech. Like I don't even know what other huge tech cards there are.
Well, we have Lysander's Lab. That's a tech card in some decks for spell tags and fairy charms.
Oh, I don't even consider that a tech in Pika. I think that's like a staple, and that's the biggest. And in Reshi, I guess then, I think that stays regardless.
Okay,
It's just a card.
cool. Carl, which tech cards do you think will rise in popularity for AC Regionals? Either techs that we did not see in Worlds or new techs or whatever.
Well, I think that going into Worlds, there was so much. The debate that I heard about a lot was about Feeny. Should I play Feeny?
Oh,
should
sure.
I not play Feeny? It was so polarizing to me. Where like if I talk to one person, they're like, you have to play Feeny or you just take the L to Blounce, and the next person was like, no, I run 3 com or 2 com or whatever. What's the point? And I think it was just such a polarizing thing. And now that Blounce got second, I mean, if you needed a reminder, that shows that it's still very good. The being able to knock out tag teams for being a 2-prizer, obviously, I don't even have to speak about it. I think we'll see more Feeny. I think that card just swings things your way pretty much entirely. And I think that if you were on the fence about Feeny after seeing Blounce do pretty well, and also the amount of Blounce I saw at Worlds and at the Open was like super high. So if you're like paying attention, people love the deck, and it's easy to play. And I think we'll see more Feeny for sure.
Cool. Yeah, that wasn't on my mind, but I think you're right. James, any hot takes on tech cards either rising or falling?
I think people continue to undervalue Mew based on the world deck lists. I knew that they would. I didn't end up capitalizing on that. But I think that there's not enough Mews that are going around, and I also think that there was a prevalence of decks in the top that did play Mew in all 3 divisions. But I just think that is something that every time that I see a deck list lately, it often is missing. And I think that that's something that needs to be considered, not because it single-handedly swings a matchup, but because it does destroy a lot of players that do not know how to properly play around it and do not know how to commit resources into it.
Cool, sounds good. We're going to stick with you for this next one, James. Is Malamar still prohibiting single prize decks from seeing success?
I don't think so. I think that Malamar is just the first thing that you need to figure out if your deck is playable or not. Can your deck go at if I'm even like comfortable taking a deck at this point that just takes a bad matchup to Malamar. And it's just you need to be able to beat Malamar with your single prize deck at least some percentage of the time. But you need to more look at your other matchups as opposed to your matchup against Malamar. I think that people get caught up when looking at single prize decks and going, well, this deck just loses to Malamar. And that may be true, but if your deck has actual options and ways to like outplay the other decks, and you take actual good matchups, whereas Malamar does 130 and then usually takes a loss, and that's just something that I think needs to like change moving forward. Is people need to be like, yes, probably if I play against Malamar with my single prize deck, then it's they just get the recursion and they're not having to find new attacker every turn. I'm unfavored. But single prize decks definitely can still find success, I think, if they base it on their other matchups.
Yeah, I agree. Like Charlie said, maybe we expect the Malamar player base to be lesser skilled on average, and maybe even decline a bit, since the higher skilled players on average may be moving away from Malamar. And maybe the single prize decks that aren't Malamar based won't be gate kept out of the format, because I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with single prize attackers. Like, it's literally half of the meta is almost unexplored or unstreamlined right now because we couldn't play it for Worlds because of how much Malamar there was. My next question is going to be for Carl. Do you think that we saw the best archetypes at Worlds, or do you think there is still room to grow for AC and Knoxville?
Well, it's funny to me because, like, so Worlds is the first tournament of this format, right? However, like, this week we have, like, a monumental card coming out that will just shape things further, in my view. So, like, we're not getting the same format again.
Right.
Which is cool and lame because I don't think we saw the best deck at Worlds by a long shot.
Okay.
I think we saw a great player who caught some good matchups, who avoided some tough ones, and knew his deck inside and out, and it worked out. But I think things were just maybe a good example that Charlie gave earlier is the Dark Box deck, right? Like, I wasn't playing it that way at all. And it's very good if you've tried it. But I think there's so many further mods to make on some of these things that we saw, or different things to try, that there's no chance that we've seen the best deck in the format, which is a shame because our format's just changing again, like, very soon. So I don't think we saw the best deck at Worlds, and I don't think we'll ever really know what the best deck in the Worlds format was by virtue of Jessie and James, so...
Right. I do think Jessie and James will change things, but I don't think we should overestimate it just yet. I do think that single prize decks can add in draw support like Jirachi or Zebstrika to kind of safeguard themselves against Jessie and James, and other decks can try to do similar things. But I also think it might just give us a Worlds-esque meta where single prizers are a bit more viable, like we've been alluding to with Malamar on the possible decline as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I have a couple one prizers in mind.
Yeah, I would really like it to open up even more. We did have a very varied meta, but just a lot of GX-based stuff. So we're going to have 2 more questions for everyone. We'll start with Charlie here and see if anyone else has anything to add. What does Jessie and James do to the meta? And, of course, we can couple this with the Wheezing card that goes along with it, which I will also show on screen here. So what does Jessie and James do to the meta? Does it bring new decks? Does it knock other decks out? Does it enhance decks that already existed?
All right, so I'm on the other side of the coin. I think Jessie and James does nothing. Literally nothing for the meta. Already one of the best Reshiram variants, or fire variants, that got top 4. In my opinion, the best PikaRom variant, and every Malamar all play Jirachi. And Jessie and James from 0 does not really do that much to that deck. They can, Stamp to 1 really didn't do that much to him. So I don't know why Jessie and James to 0 very often will. It's, unless you're going to do it turn 1 and your opponent doesn't start Jirachi, and, almost never will someone not search out or try to bench a Jirachi if your opponent starts, Mew, and you would see, and they mulliganed away a Honchkrow GX and something like that. Like you're never gonna do that if you have any idea of why, or if you have any interest in surviving a Jessie and James. No, I don't think the Weezing is amazing. I think that card would have been insane and expanded. Thank God it's not an expanded. And yeah, I don't think the card's going to do much.
Okay, Carl, agree or disagree?
I think the card is pretty good. I think it's going to see a whole bunch of play. I think it's going to influence decks and the way decks are built, at least initially. And then we'll see how it goes, right? Like, we'll see come the end of September how it worked out. I think I'm scared of it, honestly. It bothers me to know that it now is something I have to worry about. I think it will be significant. I just think it's really good.
James?
So I am somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
So I am at the point where Jessie and James is, and this is something that I just have a problem with card design in general in this game recently, and it's that the card is either going to be broken or it's going to be unplayable. There's not going to be an in-between. And in a situation where the card is good at all, it is going to be game-breaking and the end of the game. And I dislike cards that are so polarizing, and I wish that there was more in the middle. And I'm very, very glad that it's gone from expanded. But the thing is that if this does end up, if someone does find a new angle with this card, with something like the Oranguru Pidgeotto deck, or if someone does find something else with this, as is right now, I don't think that, I think that your deck needs to be aware that it can get its hand taken down to 0 at some point in the game now that does exist, like Carl was saying. But I don't think that it's something that we all need to be playing the card immediately at Atlantic City. Like, I don't think it's anything like that. I don't think that it also is going to never see play, though. And I think that it's just kind of this, it will find its spot, and when it does, it's going to be really, really nasty, is what I feel.
I think I can tend to agree with that a bit. It might find its like one niche spot that it's like, oh my god, this combo is kind of insane, but it won't be everywhere.
I think the problem that I think is going to be
likely.
the consistency with getting the combo on the turn that it's going to be good. Just having access to the Weezing or just access to the Jessie and James and the stamp on the turn that they're at 2. Like, it's just without access to something like Zoroark, and I think that's we're in Zoroark fallout right now, where everyone's like, these combos are great, and then it's like, wait, we can't do this anymore because the broken card's gone.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to find a spot in the middle there.
Cool. So this one's going to be for everyone. Last question before we wrap up the video. What do you think the 2 strongest decks are at the moment, either because of Worlds or because of your testing? Just if we were picking strongest decks for AC Regionals, which is our next North American major event, what do you think the 2 strongest decks are, and be as specific as possible? Carl?
I would go with Pika, and I would go with Blounds. One of those 2 is... I will play neither, but they're very strong. Cool. And,
great.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would settle on.
I love to know that your personal bias isn't affecting what you think is the strongest.
Oh, I hate them both. I hate decks like that. I need a rare candy or put your hand to 0. I have to do either one. And if I can't, I'm not interested.
That back, please. I'd love that. More of those, like, ridiculous decks.
Yeah.
James.
I don't like PikaRom for Worlds.
Yeah, it's not my style.
James, 2 strongest decks.
I think the 2 strongest decks are PikaRom, and I think a case could be made for Gardevoir or Mewtwo. I think that those are, and I say that, and I really do think that all of the decks in this current format are very, very close. I really, really do. I think this format is really very good as far as matchup spread goes. But I would put those 2 ahead of the others. It's very, very hard to argue against a deck that is still able to play Ultra Ball and Shaman when the other decks can't. And that's kind of where I'm at.
And Let Loose. It's playing Let Loose now.
This deck gets to do these things, and none of the rest of you can't. Have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie, two strongest decks.
All right, I'm going to be very specific with lists, and not exactly for personal bias, but yes, Supreme Court, which is Pika Judge, and it's that we call it that because, or I'm just using that name because it's the one that has Jirachi. Please play that list or somewhere within like a 3 or 4 card realm of what my group played because we don't think there's much better. You can change the tech cards, you can change a lot of things, but the engine itself is pretty untouchable. And number 2, I'm going to say Perfection, which is just Mew Box, but it's very specifically Henry's list. Or within 1 card. He told me before that he wants to cut Fire Crystal for Energy Recycle System.
Yeah, he mentioned that on Rahul's video, I think, very recently.
Yeah, but as I think I said before, I forgot. I either play against 4 or 5 Mew Box at Worlds, and I went 3-1 or 4-1, with my loss being to Henry. Yeah. And his deck was so much more consistent than every other list. I played against a list that didn't have Meg Cargo. I played against a list that played 4 Hapu, like the Japanese one. I played against the Coach Trainer Rainbow Energy list that Drew Kennett played. And then I played against Henry, and he has 4 Acrobike, 4 Pokegear, and he's just drawing everything. He plays Electromagnetic Radar. I'm like, what is this? Like, I watched the stream game. He just dropped the radar. I'm like, what's this guy doing? Is he playing something GX also to discard off the Dene? And, like, that deck's insane. And it's really consistency that sets that list apart from all the other ones.
Cool. Great. Really great answers, guys. And thank you so much for being on this discussion. I think it was a really unique one to have and a lot of helpful knowledge for the watchers. Carl, James, and then Charlie, go ahead and say any of your shout-outs, and then we'll wrap this baby up.
Okay, well, I'd like to shout out to you, Luke, for having me on the video.
Of course.
Recently, over the past year, man, I've kind of my platform is elevated to this level of being known as really nice and really helpful, and I really appreciate people who perpetuate that, because it's one thing for me to tell people that I'm, I just want to be a helpful guy, but it's another thing for other people to dap me up and have my back and stuff like that. So I just want to thank everybody who's a part of that. So yeah, that's all I have.
Cool. Great. James?
I'd like to thank you as well for having me on. I'd like to thank everybody for following me along. You can follow me at Twitter at WamesPTCG. I'd like to shout out my friend Stephen Durham and Card Trooper Games. And yeah, I hope to see everybody moving forward. And this season looks to be an interesting one. They brought back into standard, so I'm back.
And Charlie.
Shout out to Luke first. Thank you very much for having me on.
No problem.
Shout out to my Twitter, I guess. I'm C4_TCG. I'll post lists. I'll post various things, at least when I'm playing the game, which hopefully will be more than it's anticipated to be right now. And then shout out to Top Cut Comics. You can go on their site and use promo code TCCTeam10. You'll get 10% off your entire order and pretty well shipped. Everything's good. I've always had a great experience ordering for them. And then shout out Brett Burns as well.
Great, guys. Thanks so much, and I hope you all enjoyed watching this. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.